literally so busy trying to respond to Wendy talking about Sif turning 1 that I forgot to push the button. Hello, everybody.
Hey,
How are
folks.
we doing? I have to. Oh, I cannot see you. I have to confirm. Oh, keep talking.
Who can you not see? I'm confused.
No,
Is it the
you're
chat?
good.
Is it me?
Keep talking.
Okay. So, we, well, I have a desk buddy because this is our last panel. So, Sheriff beeps, y'all.
Sheriff beeps, y'all. Okay, let's try that again. Should I literally go out and go back in again? I can do that. I'm
You
very
could,
tough.
you could do that.
Okay,
Do
you
you
want
want to?
Okay, right, watch. Hi, everybody. I'm drunk with power. I have access to buttons. I'm drunk with power. Hello, and welcome to this, our last ArchiveCon panel. Oh, apparently we're supposed to say ArchiveCon like pirates.
ArchiveCon.
There you go. Thank you very much. Welcome to our last ArchiveCon panel.
ArchiveCon.
Oh, hold on a second. I'm getting some word about there's some verification issues going on. Wendy, why don't you DM me if that's an issue? It looks like phone verification is now required for chat. I think that's the case. I think that's a Twitch setting. I don't think that's something we've done. If it's an issue, let me know.
ArchiveCon.
Quick vamp.
ArchiveCon.
You're just doing it for the clips now.
I'm also getting dangerously close to Optimus Prime. Or Optimus Prime before he started selling car insurance. For shame, son of Iacon. For shame.
Okay, we're already off on a tangent. This is delightful. Hello. This is our last Q&A panel for the con. It's been 4 days full of convention and meetings, and we're getting a little punchy, so this is going to be really, really fun. Imperio has wonderfully collated a bunch of seed questions for us in advance, so we're going to start by going through some of those.
Yes, indeed.
And then afterwards, I'm sure you fine folks will keep us entertained with all sorts of interesting questions. And Wendy, our lovely moderator, all the love for Wendy, is going to be collecting them and passing them to us. But first, there is somebody who would like to say hello.
Dun, dun,
Chungus
dun,
would
dun,
like
dun,
to
dun,
say
dun,
hello.
dun.
Chungus, in his delightful, handmade by Wendy hat and coat with the little tails
The
and
yeasty lad.
everything. Does he not look delightful?
The yeasty boy.
The yeasty boy, the lad who, as you can see, 20 June. Oh, 20 June. Yeah, it's almost his birthday. He's almost 2. So we thought we would let Chungus come and say
Another
hello.
16 years, he'll be off to the last university left on Earth.
What does yeast university look like? What do you
Doughy.
major in? Like different types of fermentation?
Fermentation. Other things.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does he start dating kombucha? What happens? I don't know. I think we'll have to.
Do you want fanfic? Because this is how
Oh,
you get
thank you,
fanfic.
Pezzy. Getting baked. Thank you. There's a time and place for everything, and that's university. I love it. That sounds fantastic. Taking over the humans. Yeah, I mean, graduates from yeast into parasitics studies. I don't know. Cool. So I'm going to start by asking Alasdair the first Q&A question because it looks like we're having a technical issue with Twitch and some verification that I might need to pop into just briefly in order to double check. So we're going to ask Alasdair some questions and he will take it away. This comes from Phil. Any thoughts on Thaddeus Dahl, him practically running the tundra and his relationship to Peter?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think Peter is tremendously fond of Thaddeus. In fact, I don't think Peter really has friends, aside from, whichever cat you happen to think. You happen to know that Peter has in his life. But I think if he did have friends, Thaddeus would be the friend. And he would show up at his house and do friend things, which for Peter would be, please do this for me. Why isn't the ship clean? Thaddeus, help me move this body. Thaddeus, why are we being raided again? Thaddeus, why aren't we being raided again? And so on and so forth. So yeah, I think Peter is very fond of Thaddeus, and I think Thaddeus doesn't get a fair shake for just how hard he works.
Does Peter Lucas, Avatar of the Lonely, hate that he's so attractive?
It's a constant burden.
And do you have any Peter Lucas headcanons you'd like to share?
Several things, at least one of which is in a short story on AO3. Um,
Well, I should pull up a link to that story.
I subscribe very firmly to the idea that somewhere out there is a universe where the Magnus Archives is the Muppet Archives. And I don't have the person to hand, so if you are listening or watching this right now, please know I saw this and appreciate it. Someone on my Twitter feed very, very kindly pointed out that, firstly, my initial belief, which is that Peter should be played by Bobo the Bear, is absolutely correct, and secondly, that Jonah clearly needs to be Uncle Deadly. Or Elias needs to be Uncle Deadly, whichever one you happen to choose. I think possibly the most interesting part of my headcanon is he's not dead. Zalia will
and or surprise. Behold my shocked face.
Zalia will know this because we talked about this in some detail. I think we both decided that Peter basically views all of that. He has this moment of clarity, and you can hear it in his last appearance.
No body.
Where
No
exactly, no body. Where you could almost hear him
Where's
go,
the body, Michael?
right.
Show me the body.
But there's an element to the dialogue where you can actually hear him going, I have fucked all the way up. You know why I fucked all the way up? People. Peace out. And I think when John yeets him into oblivion, what John actually does is yeets him into the lonely, where Peter hangs out for a little while, and then reconstitutes himself and retires to the coast of a small loch in Scotland, far enough away from most of the reality breaks that he doesn't really notice it. I believe Zalia and I also worked out that he should have an umbrella with this on the top of it, and the words, fuck off, Elias.
Oh, that would be delightful.
The lonelier, absolutely.
Be even lonelier. Yes, I love this. Awesome. Let's see. This is from Paige Adams. Hello, guys. I really enjoy all the work that the both of you do. Thank you. My question for you is, what's it like to be in a professional voice acting field? Do you have any struggles with starting off voice acting, and what did you do to overcome those struggles?
I will let you know when I succeed.
Those struggles, they are still very much in the struggling phase.
Is the cheap answer. This is one which I think we should both answer because we probably have very different responses to it. Getting started is something with a gateway on it, and that gateway is money. If you have the money for a phone with audio recording capability and an internet connection, you can get started. The best example I can give you is Tin Can Audio, who are a Glasgow-based firm whose very first show has one cast member who also wrote it and produced it and composed the music.
Yeah.
Now, David is astoundingly talented, but David also started from, I have to do all of this. Yeah. So I think I always try and give advice in threes. The first one is always, for me, the hardest step is always the first one.
It's just doing something, taking any step, yeah.
The second is...
I'm going to jump in. Don't do it alone.
Yes.
Find someone to, like any creative, like any creative endeavor, having people who want to do this with you, who can encourage you, who can give you advice, who can be a sounding board, all of that's really good. There are a lot of podcasts out there, and there are lots of opportunities for voice acting. A lot of those opportunities aren't paid. That's a whole nother hour. That's a whole nother discussion. But if you're new in career and getting started, throw all the time that you have devoted to this hobby at auditioning. Just practice. Try things. Know that you're going to not be cast a lot. It happens. And then you will be cast in nothing, and then you'll have an experience and you can build on it. It's exactly the same kind of advice we give for short fiction authors, which is Write things and submit them. Yeet them into the void and see who voids back. This analogy got away with me.
I have a third one as well.
Oh, of course you do.
Um,
You're welcome.
Thank you. Which is every creative I know in every creative field, and I think voice actors this is particularly true of. I'm thinking of the excellent interview we did with Kareem a couple of months ago. Kareem, who is incredibly prolific and still feels like he could be doing more. Creatives are conditioned to ignore catharsis. We're conditioned to be hungry and constantly chasing the next thing and accepting
And we prepare
terrible
to fail
conditions.
really well because we're so used to doing it.
Yeah. The moment you start something, you've won. The moment you send off an audition, you've won.
Yeah.
The moment you get back up after an audition has been turned down, you've won.
Change your success criteria and give yourself that on-ramp for sure.
We're conditioned to believe the victory condition is blowing up the Death Star. The victory condition is getting in the X-Wing. One of our favorite fitness bloggers, she's a beast, who is superb, released a great essay that speaks to this a couple of months ago called "I Just Do Things Scared."
Mm.
Your response to something being, "This is intimidating and I don't know whether I should do it," is always, "This is intimidating and I'm going to see if I can."
Yeah.
Because doing that, that's the win, and that will get you stronger and better and more focused regardless of what happens.
There was the follow-up question here from Paige Adams is, what was the best experience you had while working on or in a podcast?
Oh, that's a really interesting one that requires me to be tactful because at least two of my producers might be in this chat.
Hello to the raid. Thank you for joining us.
I'll give you one from each of the big shows I've been on. With Magnus, it was the Pastoral Care. I don't know how widely advertised this is, but my final episode had to be recorded, I think, 4 times. I was either 3 or 4. There was this freakish 1 in a million hardware issue that happened twice.
Hey, Mike.
And Alex, when he told me about this, he was obviously expecting me to tear a strip off him. And I'm like, why? These things happen. But they did such a great job of looking after me, and they did such a great job of making sure that that was done and fitting around my schedule, and I've never forgotten that. With St. Kilda, it's working with them, specifically working with Naomi, who is some kind of internet mischief goddess. I really think that's the only plausible explanation for her at this point. I sometimes ask Naomi how tall I am, and the answer that will come back is 2.
Yes.
I promise.
Or illegal.
Or illegal, or unlawfully tall.
Unlawfully. Better grammar.
That's a really strong, really tight cast, and they're a real pleasure to be around and to work with. Likewise, Roguemaker, which is on the 3rd episode of which released this week. Roguemaker is playing in that is like playing inside a classic science fiction novel. There's so much going on all the time, and everyone has a plot, and the way it shifts between them, it is structured like no other show I've ever been part of. And Emma and Rook have done the entire creative team have done such an incredible job with that. And I'm really excited to see how the final episodes sound. And with Super Suits, which we're recording on and off throughout the year, it's really good to be funny. They have absolutely enabled my inner wise ass, which, as anyone who has been around me for more than about 15 seconds will know, isn't that inner.
You have an outside voice for your wise ass.
One of the most fun experiences I've ever had was recording the episode of Super Suits I've recorded so far, where they literally went, okay, improvise an argument. And Ben and I just clicked instantly. And the result is one of my proudest moments, despite the fact that I spend most of it unconvincingly sobbing. It is so good.
It's going to be delightful. It will be delightful. Ben arguing with Alasdair. I mean, who knew? Exactly. All right. This is from Compost Witch. What's a day in the life of running EA look like?
This one's you.
Oh, yeah.
This one's all
okay.
you.
So, first thing, nothing is done in isolation.
Nope.
A lot of people think about EA and they think about Alasdair or I, or they think about like the voices they hear when they hear the shows. The the company publishes 5 podcasts. There's about 100 of us globally in EA. It's a pretty big group. And day in the life of is kind of difficult to categorize because it's a side hustle. Alistair and I both work full-time jobs in addition to all the podcast work we do and all the streaming we do and everything we do with EA. So we always joke that no, we don't have time for kids. We have a company, and that's what we do. Good example, we have big meetings with all of our different groups. Like there's some folks who do the editorial side of things, and there's some folks who do more the business sorts of things. And we meet with all of the businessy sorts of things at least once a quarter, if not once a month, which is why my voice is going out, is because I've had...
This is your 7th meeting in 36 hours, isn't it?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've had 11 meetings and 4 panels in the last 3 days. Now, that is very disproportionate. That happens once every 3 months. But our role in EA is as publisher, which means it's our job to remove barriers between editors and the stories they want to publish. We are unique in our approach in that we try to take as much of the administration of running a magazine/podcast as possible and consolidate those tasks and give them to other people. So for example, it's very common for editors to send all the contracts with the stories with their authors and their narrators. Well, we publish every week 4 times. So that's 200 stories a year. So that's over 400 contracts a year. Instead of having each editorial team do that, we have a contract administrator, one person who does it all. So that's a lot of what we do. We do the uninteresting, unglorious, boring stuff. The taxes, the banking, the figuring out if there's a problem and how to solve it, the keeping track of where things in the industry are changing, all the kind of HR, lots of HR, new people joining, people taking off, because all 100 people in EA are all doing this as a side hustle. So people need to be able to come in, get the experience they want, and then we expect them to leave. The analogy we use is the Avengers. You join the team, you get some experience, and then it's time for you to go off and do something awesome all on your own, which is fine. Unless you're the person who's in charge of keeping track of who's coming and who's going, that becomes a bit of a part-time job. So, yeah, we do all the unglamorous behind-the-scenes stuff so that the editors can focus on the thing that's most important to them, which is reading and publishing and finding the right voices to narrate and talk about the right stories. And then in our copious spare time, we're hanging out with y'all.
I mean, the thing which I bring in on top of that, we are co-owners, and I am quite happy with saying upwards of 95% of the admin stuff is done by Marguerite. Because, as one of our former staff so beautifully put it, and Summer, if you're watching, hi, Marguerite has a black belt in committee. I struggle a lot sometimes with where I fit in, because it often feels like I have very soft skills. Radical soft boy.
But you are a soft boy, but those are really important, right? I grew up in the corporate world. I've been a lawyer. I've been in companies my whole life. I know how all of that works. The reading the charts and doing the forecasting, that's all of that. It's fine. What Alasdair's really, 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 really good with is empathy and people and messaging. He knows how to talk about difficult situations in ways that connect with people or that take them on journeys or that bring them to destinations all together in supportive ways. And that is not a soft skill. That is a difficult skill to master. You're quite good at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll do the math. You do the chocolate bars. It's fine. We've got this down.
I will give you a brief sidebar which will explain the chocolate bar reference. I was confirmed as a Catholic when I was 12. I am a resting Catholic. I haven't been to Mass for about 15 years.
They'll reactivate the chip at some point.
The RFID chip, the last time I was at the Vatican, still meant the people I was with were waved through without being searched. That's about it. And also, just for the avoidance of doubt, yeah, very much in favor of all forms of gay rights, and abortions are vital. The only person in charge of a woman's body is that woman. I'm not that type of Catholic. I don't need any type of Catholic other than non-active service.
Recovering.
But, recovering.
Current nomenclature.
But when I was growing up, our local Catholic parish priest was essentially my granddad. And he was rock and roll. This is the only person I've ever met who could legitimately open a conversation with. So when I was on the nuclear submarine, because he was the chaplain in the Navy, and he used to go on war games maneuvers, and they'd deploy all these commandos and armored cars and all of this stuff. And this guy, who would be in the full webbing, and of course he's a priest, he doesn't fight, so his packs and pouches are all full of chocolate bars. So at the end of the war, they're all getting debriefed and getting the cups of tea, and he's walking down the line, opening these pouches, handing Mars bars to all these trained killers. And
that's the analogy we use. That's what Alasdair does. He deploys with the troops and hangs out the chocolate bars, and he's very good at it.
Saz, that is absolutely the perfect description. I keep refusing the update.
Yeah, it's all our Catholic firmware is out of date.
Download? No. You know?
All right, shall we do another question?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. This is from Lynn with 2 N's and an I. How much does Peter think a banana costs?
£10. I mean, how hard can it be, Martin?
And what was Lonely Eye's favorite date?
Favorite date? Oh, that's a good one. I think he is a ridiculously soppy old fart and never ever wants to talk about this. I think there was like a blazing argument, and I think he proposed to Elias in the Arctic Circle at midnight, alone on the boat, having served dinner to him, surrounded by whales in the Aurora Borealis. And Elias is like, I hate you.
I'm sure of it.
You've made me so happy.
Dinner was a $10 banana. Yes,
Peter.
No, stop. Okay, so if you were with us last night, you know what on earth he's doing. But apparently, Alasdair read Zalia's comment about how Elias needs to be Miss Piggy, and it informed a certain piece of reading, shall we say. Do help yourself to the fun. Put your drink down first. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Peter, could you run the archive whilst I am in prison for doing a little brutal pipe murder?
I'm kind of alternating TMA questions, and we have a lot of podcasting questions, which is delightful.
Hooray!
So this is from Anonymous. How has the podcasting field changed since you both started working in it?
It's been invented in 2014 by Serial.
And then in 2012. And then we literally have the reset the clock meme on our phones for every time some major media outlet decides we're gonna invent podcasting. Or what was it the last time? All of these narrative storylines or
Congratulations, you've invented audio drama.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh.
That's the cheap answer. The overanalyzed but fundamentally optimistic. Hi, personal brand. One is probably this. I think podcasting has become orders of magnitude more interesting since I started doing it. And I think that's because it's a relatively new field, even now. Like I say, only invented in 2014 by Serial.
What? This brand new startup called Podcastle that no one had ever heard of before. What a good name. Somebody should use that.
Oh, inside baseball jokes. My apologies. But when it first started out, there was a huge preponderance of dude with beard and dude without beard talk about stuff. And in the
Smash cut. 20 years later.
And 5-6 years later, there is unfortunately still entirely too much dude talks about stuff. And,
it's a subgenre. It's called Three Guys and a Mic.
You know, and that leads to Spotify having a bigot on tenure, but we're not going to go down that road. What's been incredible for me to see is firstly how audio drama has has just exploded across the last 3 or 4 years, and secondly, how it has done so in an unconceivably diverse manner. And it's not perfect, nothing is, but I'm very hard pressed to find any form of creative endeavor which is more engaged with and willing to have conversations about inclusion and diversity and ensuring that voices are represented than podcasting in general and audio drama in particular.
Yeah. I would say that there's two things in particular I would call out about the field back in the day. And by back in the day, I mean 2000 and now. First of all, audience perception and audience expectation has evolved a lot. Because back in the day, releasing a podcast, nobody knew what it was, so it could kind of take any form. If you ever get a chance, ask Mer Lafferty about this. So Mer Lafferty is our very dear friend, co-host of Escape Pod. She is in the Podcasting Hall of Fame. That is how brilliant at podcasts Mer is. And she talks about how podcasting these days, and probably from here on out, is almost always associated with audio. But in a technical sense, it just means any syndicated file. And so back at the very beginning, people experimented with podcasting or syndicating PDF files and artwork and all sorts of different things. But it's narrowed now to the expectation is an audio presentation.
It's like how Kickstart has become a descriptor rather than a company title.
Exactly. Thank you very much for the link, Compost Witch. But what an audience kind of wanted or expected in the old time, and what an audience expects and accepts today is very different. Perfect example. So most of our shows started 2005, 2006, 2007, where it was considered anathema that you would run advertisements. Oh dear Lord, crude commercial behavior? This is art! This is fiction! How dare you! It wasn't done. And so the audience has developed that expectation for content. These days, audiences know that commercial content is a necessary evil. It is how people pay the bills to be able to produce the content that the audience wants to consume. Very radical different shift in expectation from the audience. And I had a second point about how the field has changed.
I have a jokey yet cogent aside, which might give you the time to cunningly cover so you could rebuild. We're good like this, by the way. Non-verbal shorthand.
It's like a baton. I would pass
machine.
it. But...
The other element where you can see that quite a lot of the time, strangely, is YouTube. I like food. Food's great, and I like cooking. And one of the food tubers, which we're very fond of, is a guy called Adam Ragusa. He's a very talented cook. He has an attitude towards washing up, which chills me to my soul. But he also has this magnificent running gag about his sponsorships because he folds them into the episode. It's things like, and then if you lightly saute this omelet, it'll be delicious in no time. Do you know what else takes no time? Preparing a meal from Just Eat. This week's sponsors. Yeah. And every single episode, it's folded in that way where it's become like a gag because you're waiting for it. You never see it coming, and then you're like, God damn it, Adam. I hate that works.
I remembered what the other thing I was going to say about podcasting is I think a lot of its course has kind of paralleled Netflix and how the rise of streaming services and the ubiquity of streaming services now, how that has changed and influenced how art gets created. So old school television, right? 48-minute episode, got to have 2 ad breaks. 13 to 26 episodes per season, a very prescribed format. Netflix comes along and it's like, you wanted a 102-minute episode and 3 12-minute episodes? We don't care. We're not subject to those rules. Podcasts followed suit. They have always played with length, format, flexibility in ways that its closest contemporary media format, which would probably be radio, hasn't done. And part of that is entirely commercially driven. And lawyer hatch regulation. They're not being broadcast on the FCC airwaves, so they don't have to do things certain ways. Kind of like HBO lets it have content that other broadcast television doesn't have to. Podcasting can be the same way.
Exactly.
Cool. Thank you for covering for me as I look for our next question. I appreciate that.
Well, anytime. What I'm
All
here
right,
for.
and this is from, I believe this is Satan Cheeto. I hope I'm pronouncing that
Good name.
correctly. What would Peter's D&D class be?
The class he would be expected to be by his family is cleric, because of course, fundamentally he's an avatar. He's a priest. The class he'd go for is rogue.
Shit. Really? A
Yes,
rogue?
he's a pirate.
No, he wants to be a rogue. He'd probably wind up some sort of tanking paladin to try and protect some little weenie half-elf something or other Elias's class cannoning.
Elias, why are you playing a halfling? Because, Peter, they will never see me coming.
Yes, precisely. What do you think is the extent of Peter's materialization powers? Does he just make you forget that he walked in the door or the door opened but he's invisible? Or can he actually like teleport, like fast travel? Could he walk through walls like a ghost?
I think it's two things. I think some of it, and this is, I think it's the two-part 10th Doctor story set in the library, where about 15 minutes into the second part, and it's one of those moments where Moffat's scripts actually land. He basically has someone turn to camera and go, "Hey, you know those scene cuts? Yeah, they're happening inside the story too." I think Peter edits reality a little bit all the time. And the best example I can give you is his first appearance. It makes absolutely no sense that he just appears in that interview room, unless he's always been in that interview room, or unless he wafts blissfully down through the corridors, possibly having that inherent middle-aged white guy power of just walking briskly, going, "Morning, well done," nodding at people, and they're all like, "Well, obviously he's in charge. It's fine." Or he quietly edits himself out until he turns that power off. I think he can also do the fog thing, and I think he only does the fog thing when it's very, very funny.
Bastard.
Or when it's very funny, or when he just can't be bothered. And a lot of the time that's with Martin. I choose to believe he spends a lot of time just in fog form behind Martin going, I just can't, I shouldn't. I'm going to. Martin! Ah! Why'd you keep doing that? Doing what?
Doing what? Yes, yeah, I'm sure it gives Peter a visceral little thrill every time he's able to, pull that off. Yeah, somebody in the chat saying like blow on the back of his neck or his hair, just.
Oh,
Yeah.
he is absolutely basic enough to do that. Tap on someone's shoulder, then turn around the other way as they turn around thing.
Yes.
He would do that in a heartbeat.
Yes, absolutely. All right, let's look for another question. Let's see. Da, 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 da. What's it like to have a good part of the fandom, including me? Hi, Martin. Unironically shipping Peter and Elias.
It's delightful.
It's wonderful.
It's genuinely delightful. I
We
radical
spent probably too much of last panel talking about this as well.
yeah, radical soft boy. I fundamentally believe pretty much everybody's redemptive. I mean, I think not everyone, and anyone who spends enough time around me will get a good idea of who's welded to the naughty step as far as I'm concerned. But I think it helps the inherent horror and tragedy of the show if, firstly, you steer into the idea the avatars are aware of what they are, and more interestingly, what they aren't. And you can see that with a couple of them. There's a sense with a couple of them being very much at the end of what they think is their story, and they've just accepted that they are this thing poured into a human shell. And I think the other way that it works is twofold. I think if you embrace the idea that Peter and Elias have this relationship, firstly, it adds a very, very strong note of tragedy to everything that happens in season 4 and season 5. And secondly, it adds a note of redemption, which then circles back around and adds more horror. because fundamentally these people could choose something else. They could choose the thing that they have, and they don't, or they can't,
Or they don't think that they
or they don't
can.
think they can deserve it. And it's like adding spice to something. It gives you two or three extra notes, depending on where you're standing, on what your perspective is,
Hmm.
that makes each one of those characters even more interesting.
Delightful. Hang on a second. There was a second question there. I gotta find it again. Oh no, there was not. Let's see. This question comes from Ghost. If you can make one small thing canon in TMA, what would it be?
Kayaking.
Excellent answer. I totally agree. It would be the kayaking.
Kayaking. That whole thing that comes up in the season 4 Q&A, where Johnny and Alex just spontaneously come out with that thing of how Peter is actually a kind of a great dad with Tim, because Tim is so completely self-aware and so calm that he doesn't mind that Peter really doesn't want him there, and on some level doesn't notice, because Tim's just having a good time being Tim. You know, Peter, are we going kayaking now? Yes, Tim. Great, thank you. Oh, chips. Can we have chips?
That would be delightful. And then does Peter Lucas, again, this is still from Ghost, does Peter Lucas ever go on holiday? And if so, where? Smash cut. My brain is going, Peter always gets into the clubs in Berlin. No one can stop him.
Yes. Oh, yes. Peter spends a lot of time at sea, and he likes to spend a lot of time alone. And as a result, I choose to believe he does a lot of reading, which is why I think there's a very specific stripe of one character that he loves, and that's Superman. I think Peter aspires to the Fortress of Solitude.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And think about libraries. They're often open. I mean, they're like churches. They're places where people seek refuge,
Yeah,
but they like to be alone. And there's lots of places you can be all by yourself in a church or in a library at 2 in the morning with nobody else around and all those lovely sodium lights that you love so much outside.
I genuinely think that at some point Peter and Elias have watched John Carpenter's The Thing. And as it's finished, there's been this awkward silence as Elias knows what's coming. And Peter opens his mouth, and Elias goes, "For the last time, we are not opening an institute at the pole."
But it would be so good. Be so good. It would be cheaper than the thing in space, that's for sure. All right. All right, let's ask another one. Ooh, this is a delightful question from Ness. What do you imagine Peter and Elias bet on? And what are the stakes? I love that dynamic of the Lonely Eyes relationship and even the non Lonely Eyes relationship. The fact that there is that kind of antiquated, quote, honorable slash disreputable concept of the gentleman's wager.
I think the gambling is at the core of the power dynamic. And I choose to believe that over time, and depending on what version you buy into, that time could be centuries. Over time, that has flipped around an awful lot. That there's been times where Elias has genuinely manipulated him through the bets, through passing impossible wagers to him that he knows he cannot win. And then Peter begins to flip that around and starts doing it with Elias, and that's maybe the inciting incident for the relationship. I think, strangely, one of the fiction pieces we read yesterday, for me, has the kernel of truth that I choose to go for about what they bet on. And I think it is tiny little things.
At
That
first.
at
That's
first,
what starts,
you know,
right?
it's things like, if Tim makes that sick jump, I'll do the washing up for the next month. And if he doesn't, you'll do it for the next year. You're on. That kind of thing.
And then Peter just totally doesn't pay attention to the fact that the stakes are completely disparate.
Yes.
It's all about the thrill of being pitted against each other as opposed to Elias who's using it to gain power. For Peter, it's, oh, you're engaging on my level.
Exactly. it's him realizing there's someone he can play with. And being so happy with that, being so happy that there's someone who sees him and accepts him for who he is, that he chooses not to see that it's a control mechanism,
Yeah.
at least at first.
Yeah. That's a brilliant question. I love it. Do you think any of the other avatars get involved in their bets? Simon absolutely does. 100% third wheel Simon.
Coach trip. You know it makes sense. You know once a century they do their version of the Bilderberg group where they all go off somewhere and discuss who's going to get what bit of the planet when. And it just ends so badly. Simon always suggests charades. It always ends with stabbing. You know, the web always screws the place up. The distortion insists that they've been locked out when in reality they've turned the door to their room into a cabbage. You know, all of this stuff. And Peter always picks up the bill.
I love that. That sounds both delightful and horrific.
ArchiveCon.
Oh, God, how dare you!
Peter, hurry up. We're going to be late for my panel.
Some horrific,
everything.
like, Butlin's cottage community on the Welsh North Coast in winter when it's cheap.
I've been where ArchiveCon is held. I will bet you it is held at the holiday camp in Prestatyn, or what, as we came to refer to it sometime around day 19, Prestatyn grad.
It's like, no, I know I tried to get the nice resort in Dubai, but they canceled last minute. Honest. Oh, God.
Simon,
my skin's crawling just thinking about it.
Simon, we've been over this. You're not allowed in the Burj Khalifa again. Not after last time. Tom Cruise still has the nightmares. Good. Well done on that, by the way.
He deserves them. Yes, exactly. I'm trying to read through my question. Okay, we had one that came up in the chat, so I'm going to jump to that really quick. This is from Gaming Dominique Aria. Apologies if I've gotten the name wrong. What do you think would have been different if Peter were involved in season 5?
Well, obviously he'd have saved the day. It's a little bit...
Really?
A little bit more nuanced than that. I think there are two ways that you could read it. I think, strangely enough, there is very genuinely a really interesting read where Peter becomes an ally. Because think about what defines so much of the total reality breakdown in season 5. It's lack of personal space. Either you are surrounded by the physical manifestations of someone else's horror, or you're surrounded by other people, or you're trapped in someone else's world, or you are constantly in proximity to others. What about that does not sound like the avatar of the lonely skin would crawl off his body and he would go, no, quite enough of this. John, look, I'll go talk to him. And it might not work, so, Martin, read him a poem or something. Besides, can you not imagine the dynamic of the three of them trumping along the ruined landscape of England, where Peter's like, do you want to sing a little song? I fucking hate you. You so much.
Peter is the horrific, mood-dampening third wheel. Oh.
John, it's been a while. Do you need to go do something incredibly pretentious involving words again? What? I'm just saying. Yeah, just and just the whole time that they're trying to have these meaningful relationships, and Peter's like, "Hello, would you like a sandwich?" So that's one way of looking at it.
Should I just go?
The other way of looking at it is that you flip things around entirely and you take the situation at the end of season 4 with, you know, the panopticon and everything that Peter's doing, and it works. And he wins. And Elias triggers his ritual at the same time. And what they end up facing is this truly nuanced, extraordinarily diametrically opposed version of hell, where you have the reality breakdown you see in season 5. You have that total absence and removal, and malicious and deliberate removal of personal space and control of personal reality. And you combine that with crushing loneliness. And that even ties into an interesting thing you can do at the end where you have two of them, so they each have a nice boss fight. So, Martin gets to go and talk to Peter, and I would choose to believe talk him down, whilst John gets to go to Elias. Or that becomes one of the last minute things where they successfully talk Peter around, and he goes full Crowley and Supernatural and buys them time to do what needs to be done. By the way, just as an avoidance of all implied drama, I really like how the show ends. I am not backseat editing here at all. I'm just saying that there are several possibilities that could have done very different things but ended in a subtly different place.
Yeah, they could have ended it. I mean, we can have a whole discussion about ending it in a more finite way. What I really love about the ending is that it is so open to interpretation, and that I think part of the reason that's a really interesting question to ask
Oh,
of
it's a great question.
you and Peter is that the only person who really loses, and by loses I mean fails to, not even fails to accomplish his goal, he accomplishes his goal and then dies, is Elias.
Mm,
And throwing Peter into that mix in a Lonely Eyes lens gets fascinating.
it
Because
really
it
is.
could be oh, I'm just going to distract him and yoink, I'm going to grab him, we're gone, bye. There's a lot that could happen there. There's a
I
lot.
and that is a really good question, Dominic Chiara. And yeah, there's if there isn't fanfic of the alternate version of Martin facing down his version of the Lonely in season 5, where he walks into that terrifying deserted old house and Peter goes, Martin, Martin, what kept you? Then I will be amazed.
Nice. There's one more question from the Q&A, like seed questions, and I'm hesitant to ask to read it because I don't know how to answer it. But it is such a good question, I have to read it. And we've still got about 15 minutes,
Oh yeah,
so
we're in good shape. We're
a
doing
few
well.
more questions can probably find their way along if you want to ask them in the chat. So I'm going to read this question, which is a question for me, which I can't answer because because I'm me. And it's from Lou S, which is, I would like to hear Marguerite's most ridiculous law-related anecdote. Names redacted, obviously. And here's the problem with legal anecdotes. They fall into one of two categories. They are either completely inside baseball, meaning I could talk about some technical aspect of things that other lawyers would be like, oh, dog, cool. And everybody in this crowd would be like, crickets. Like, I can tell you I've gotten an expert witness disqualified at the eve of a $12 billion patent trial before, but you're all like, is that good?
I
Or they've all
rather think what you'll find is that having met you, a lot of them will go, yeah, that checks out.
yeah, well, it was a good day. What can I say? Or they fall into the category of, y'all hold my beer, right? And unfortunately, that's not the area of law I work in. Very rarely do you have a contract dispute that results in fisticuffs, for example. So, I mean, I've been to courtrooms, I've been on juries, really difficult juries. I will say this. I have been a juror on a slight content warning, but it won't be that. We're not going to get into specifics. I've been a juror on a rape trial where the lawyer for the defendant, i.e., the accused, called an expert pimp witness. I'm not kidding. He called a well-known pimp who had been in a documentary series to help try to explain this individual's behavior. He walked into the courtroom in a purple 70s wide-collared suit, hat, feather, stereotype. I should say this took place in Oakland, California. The courtroom was packed. Every person, I think, from this law firm's office was there. The news was there, not because of the crime, not because of the, unfortunately, multiple victims that this individual was being prosecuted against, but because of that expert witness. I mean, that is ridiculous, but it's also leaves a very bad flavor in your mouth.
We actually have a light-hearted one we could potentially answer that with.
Which was?
Are we allowed to tell people why there isn't an episode 200 of Escape Pod yet?
Oh, yeah. It's been long enough ago. I think we could talk
Yeah.
about it. So, episode 200 of Escape Pod, which ran years ago, is a... Was it Heinlein?
Oh, yeah, it was all you zombies.
It's a Heinlein story called All You Zombies, which we, as you properly do, negotiated with the estate and got permission to air. And this is in the days where, and we still do this, we have to educate estates about what the internet is and why they can't say, yeah, you can use that for 2 years. I'm like, sweetheart, you don't take things off the internet. I can either have it or I can't. You have
This
to make up
also
your mind.
predates us. This
Yeah.
agreement was made before we bought the company.
Yeah, a long time ago. And a long while later, we got a cease and desist letter saying, you aren't authorized and you have to take this down and blah, blah, blah. And some people in our organization, in EA as it was at the time, freaked out. Like, oh my God, we're going to get sued for millions of dollars. Help, help, what am I going to do? And I'm like, calm down. I know exactly what's happening. There's a new movie being made. And what is very, 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 very routine is that any time an established author is going to take a story and adapt it into a movie, a law firm gets hired to find everywhere in the world that thing has been used and to send form cease and desist letters that say, you have to take it down and you have to tell us you have and blah, 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 blah. And that's what happened. We just wrote back and took the text of the story off the website and went, okay, here you go, fine. And sure and behold, 18 months later, what's the name of the movie?
Predestination stars Ethan Hawke. It's actually very good.
Yeah, which is based on All You Zombies by Heinlein. Gets released.
And this is why Escape Pod goes from 199 to 201.
Exactly, because we had to take it down.
Ooh, that's a good one. Do you ever, or do you think you might have issues with EA Games for the name of the channel?
I have been waiting for that the whole So, hello, I'm a lawyer. There's this thing we do called diligence, which is whenever you're going to take a big action, you sit for a minute and you have a think about what could go wrong. And one of the things I was really concerned about when Alasdair and I were approached to take over ownership of EA is that name. Especially since I used to work in Silicon Valley and I had friends who worked at Electronic Arts, the video game distributor. I was like, oh, we're going to get sued and what am I going to do and blah, blah, blah. There is also an Escape Artists Hollywood production studio. They make our very favorite movie in the whole wide world.
A Knight's Tale.
And so we put this kind of strategy in place defensively, which is what would we do if we were ever approached? So we had a conversation about would we do X? Would we do Y? How much would it cost them if we were to do Z? You know, that kind of thing. So we've always had that strategy in place. And the two companies that we were always the most worried about, which were Electronic Arts and Escape Artists, the Hollywood production studio, have never contacted us. In fact, I learned quite recently that there is now a disambiguation page on Wikipedia that says, Escape Artists, do you mean the podcasting company or the Hollywood production studio? And I thought, oh my God, we've made it. That right there is my vindication. I was very excited. Oh, Wendy says, here's another question from Anonymous. What's something you took away from the Magnus Archive? Something you learned through the collaboration or something you realized while listening to the show or interacting with the fan base? Oh, you can think for a second. I'll go first. Y'all thirsty. Y'all hella thirsty. That's what I took away from it. God bless y'all, but it's not just you. He does really sound sexy, doesn't he? Exactly. All right, you may answer the question now. Your turn.
I need a moment. Again, the obvious joke answer is a pen.
No.
The more accurate answer is from a creative point of view. I took away two really big things. The first one was it is absolutely possible to build a colossal story out of individual pieces. And the second is you can always do better work when you do it with people.
Mm.
It was my first exposure to working within a group that wasn't escape artists, like a group of physical proximity, and it was very, very positive. In terms of what I took away from it, kind of creatively and psychologically, it's the fact I can act, and that doesn't sit very well sometimes. As I said on the panel earlier, the Taika Waititi line about my range is me, I feel applies to me an awful lot of the time. But there were things that they asked me to do with Peter that I didn't think I could do, and I could. And that has been something which I've sat with a little bit because my dad trained as an actor, and people in his class went on to do TV, and he always made his peace with the fact that by going into teaching, he got a regular job, he got he got a reliable income, and at no point was he wearing a silver unitard getting shot on Doctor Who in the middle of a quarry in Wales,
He may be the only actor in England who hasn't at this
right?
point.
But at the same time, and he never did this maliciously, but there was always a sense of don't do this because I was going to do this and I didn't, and here's why. So coming to acting in my 40s and realizing that voice acting, and this is something Kareem's talked about, voice acting is something where you are mercurial. How you look doesn't matter. And yeah, we're going to bounce off body confidence a little bit here. I'm heavier than I want to be at the moment. I'm working on it. But I sound like this, and this can go 6 or 7 different places pretty easily, and about 3 or 4 more when I push it. And that's fun, and that feels like getting away with something. It feels like getting away with something that physical acting or physical performing, like I did when I was a stage magician, never quite did. So, yeah.
It scratched at a creative itch for you that you didn't have otherwise in a very physical, temporal sort of way. Because, I mean, writing is kind of like, your brain in a jar. And podcasting can feel like your brain in a jar shouting into a void for sure. The
Yes.
other thing I would say that I've taken away from my interactive with the Magnus Archives is not just community, not just fan community, but colleagues. Hannah and Alex, I'm very lucky to count them as friends. And especially for people like, for me specifically, I'm not a writer, I'm an editor. I don't create things whole cloth. I help things come into being. That is my superpower. And the format that most often takes is the boring businessy sorts of things. Having other people to talk about the boring businessy things with has been remarkably helpful for me. And Rusty Quill is not flawless. They've done some really brilliant things. They've done some not so brilliant things. But the fact that they've approached it in a way that is professional and supportive and designed to keep people, you know, in that space in a professional way has been really useful. I mean, it's nice to have a peer, someone who I can talk about what the hell is going on with estates and contracts these days. I mean, it's a very niche nerdery, but having that has been very useful for me personally.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
By the
Uh,
way, we're at time, but I'm probably going to be sneaky and run another question or two.
Marimo Jen in the chat said, not related to anything here at all. What kind of figures are those you guys have in the background?
Why don't we post some photos to Twitter later on of
We will.
like what we have on our backgrounds?
There's a
'Cause
lot of Lego.
there's a lot of Lego in this house
Uh,
and all sorts of stuff. Yep.
there's a lot of Lego, and an assorted motley crew of Cybertronians is glowering down at me as we speak.
There's
Um,
minifigs. The shelf right behind Alistair's hat, where you can see the little squid in the hat, that is the Peter shelf. There is the figure what we got from Zalia. There is the Lonely Project book. There's
book.
a whole lot there. Exactly. Imperio says we can go late. It's fine.
Great.
Fantastic. Let's keep going. Ha ha ha. So going back to that previous anonymous question, so that it asked about something you took away from the Magnus Archives. What's something you brought to the Magnus Archives or Rusty Quill?
Ooh.
I have lots of answers to that
I
question,
have.
but lots of them are not Interesting, yes.
I have such snarky little shit first blush responses. My first blush response to that is always "Mole, my sweet style." This will sound pejorative, and it's not meant, so I'll just dive into it. Calm. A lot of the time I don't feel especially calm, or I used to not feel especially calm. Therapy's great, um, but I am 6'2" in both directions. I described myself in a work meeting a couple of months back as a friendly Celtic door.
An amiable door.
I am, by every stretch of the imagination, and large human. And I am a calming presence in a room. And that doesn't mean that Rusty Quill is kind of frantic Scooter from the Muppets running up and down going, it isn't. But there is a presence that my physical size enables me to bring to a performance. You hear it with other folks as well.
Very grounding. Kareem has that same sort of
Yeah.
energy to
Yes.
him, right?
You and with Kareem especially, you hear him in a role, and I don't know about you, but I go, oh good.
Okay, I'm safe.
And some of it's the conditioned cultural response of sounding like Radio 4. Because I grew up listening to BBC Radio 4, and that's why one of the reasons I sound like this. So, I hear people who sound like this, and I'm like, oh, okay, good. But, yeah.
We could spend a whole nother hour about how that is a cultural touchstone and how the subversion of that is like a whole cottage industry. Let's not go there.
The fantastic...
Put it this way, I'm an American who works with Brits, and I know how to weaponize the fuck out of that response. Thank you very much.
Also, my actual accent is linguistic chaff. It's amazing. I grew up adjacent to Ireland. I lived in Yorkshire for over a decade. I stand next to an American, which means a lot of the time I sound transatlantic as fuck. And people who meet me for the first time tend to go, Australian? And I'm like, g'day.
Sure, let's roll with that, right? Exactly. Some more questions. How do you find auditions? All right, couple of resources.
This one's all you.
On Twitter, there are several different accounts who just retweet auditions for audio dramas.
Hashtags to Audio Drama Sunday is good for it.
Audio Drama Sunday hashtag is a fantastic resource to go just troll through it. There's lots of different resources for them. Twitter's the place I find them. Every single audio drama that I've been involved with, or that Alasdair and I have been involved with, almost always has a back channel Slack where they coordinate the recordings and answer questions. They always have a let's share opportunities with each other channel. There are several whole Discords which are just about UK audio drama production performance, and they will share the heck out of
they really will.
Not just auditions, but grant opportunities, creative projects, like the 48-hour film thing that the St. Kilda crew did, all of that kind of stuff. And those are just communities you can join. Very useful. Following, hashtags and a couple of Twitter accounts is definitely how I find them. There are lots of them out there. Fine, now we're going to do some silly questions. What is your favorite Transformer, and which series is your favorite?
I'm so glad you asked.
Look at his face, he's so excited.
I'm going to get him.
Of course he is. Oh, okay.
I'm going to get both of them.
Dun, 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 dun. I'm vamping, here we go.
Okay.
Hold him up. That's Rat Trap.
This is Rat Trap from Beast Wars and Beast Machines. I love Rat Trap because
Beast Wars and Beast Machines. He's from both, right?
Yes. I love Rat Trap because he is one of the very, very few Transformers who is aware he is in a story he is uniquely ill-equipped to be in.
Yes.
If you've never seen any of Beast Wars or Beast Machines, Rat Trap is always the one who's like, are we sure? Because we will just die. I mean, you're like a 300-foot tall... Okay, I'll just turn into a rat. I hate all of you. And even better, Rat Trap, and I apologize for every American who's about to hear this, is from the Bronx. He has this wonderful New York accent, and he's acutely aware that no one takes him seriously, so the phrase, I know, shut up, Rat Trap, gets used an awful lot.
Exactly.
This little guy is me. If I was an Autobot.
Is that Swerve?
This is Swerve.
All right, about Swerve.
Swerve is a relatively insignificant character until you get to More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light, which are two of the recently concluded IDW published comics series, which are, along with anything John Allison has published in the last decade, some of the very best comics published in the Western world in the last 10 years. The basic premise is really simple. Hot Rod loses a bet with Bumblebee and decides he's going to leave Cybertron with a whole bunch of idiots to go find the first Exodus from Cybertron.
Like you do.
Then things happen. None of them sensible. To give you an idea of the tone of the book, 8 episodes in, Hot Rod holds a party because they've managed to get something done, with actual banners saying, "We achieved something!"
You have no idea how tempted I have been to print out a banner that says "We achieved something" and put it across your computer some days.
I love that. Please do that. Thank you. It's an incredible book.
Oh, somebody's described it as MASH in space.
That's absolutely it. It's unbelievably sad. It's hilariously funny. It's poignant. It's romantic. And in amongst all this is Swerve, who talks 19 to the dozen to cover the fact he doesn't think he should be there. And they...
Gee, I wonder where that came from. Thank you for the subscription, Domina.
Thank you, Domina. And they really steer into how Swerve deals with things and what happens when he doesn't shut up. And there is an entire episode where he has an incident. It's a pretty serious anxiety attack, I seem to remember. And they have to go into his brain to pull him out. And his brain is made of Earth sitcoms. And
so you share a brain with Swerve, is what you're saying.
Also, he is part of one of my genuine all-time favorite jokes. There is an early episode where Swerve shoots someone he really shouldn't. And they're fine, because it's very hard to kill a Cybertronian. But the next time Swerve gets in a fight, there is a moment where someone's like, "Are you giving him a gun?" "Yeah." And it just cuts to him in this full action movie pose going, "This time, I'm ready." And he is holding a Fisher-Price gun. It is 3.5 feet long. It's white. It has colored lights down the side. And it says, "My first blaster." And when he pulls the trigger on it, it goes, "Well done."
They made toys of this? You cannot believe how hard we searched to get a copy of My First Blaster.
One day it will be mine.
One day. One day it will be yours.
So yeah, those are my guys.
Here, this is from Marla Hectic Sometimes. I think that's right. Okay, silly question. I am too much of a nerd. First Lego.
Ooh, that's a great one. To the surprise of literally no one, I think it was one of the early astronaut sets.
Benny, the little blue astronaut?
Yeah. Which, growing up in the 80s meant it was literally, here are 5 grey bricks and some wheels. It's a moon rover. Look, this guy sits in it. Shut up, kid. I need to go do some more crack.
Yes.
But it's come a long way since then. Benny, by the way, the version from the Lego movie, is over on the shelf with all the other Lego astronauts. And I do mean all.
Chat, I'm going to move my camera. If this may disorient you a little bit, then look away for a second and I'll tell you when I'm done. But I'm going to try and show you. See that middle shelf? Okay, you can look back. You see that middle shelf there? That is all Alasdair's Space Lego. That is Alasdair's shelf. There's a whole lot of Funko Hulk Pop Fix. There is
Various
the Lonely
Hulks.
Shelf.
Errant from Horizon Zero Dawn.
There is the Space Shelf. And then below that, there is a cute piece of art, which I will show you, and a whole bunch of the original Star Trek, like, toys. Hang on a second. What was I going to show everybody? Yes, I was going to show everybody this. Right. So we used to go to a lot of conventions, and we have friends who sometimes can't go to the conventions and ask Alasdair to stand in as them. So Matt Wallace, very good friend, one year Alasdair stood in for him at an award ceremony. So we printed this bright red t-shirt that says, "I am Matt Wallace." And a friend of ours in the audience is an artist, and she likes to go to convention panels and like do sketches of the cons. And she made this, which is the cutest little watercolor sketch of Alasdair being Matt Wallace. The thing he's holding, he was literally pretending to be Matt. He'd written Matt-like phrases on note cards and was being very performatively like, "I shall say this as Matt." So it was adorable, and I love this little piece of art.
It was also
very sweet.
a very useful way of hiding my stage fright, because I was on stage with clipping.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Folks who don't know clipping, they are a fantastic. God, how do you describe their
noise
music?
rap, I believe, is the phrase that
Huh?
I believe noisecore is one of the ways they've
Noisecore
been
rap. Let me
described.
look at what they're calling themselves out there. Clipping is three guys, um, two musicians, and their singer,
David
David
Diggs.
Diggs. That's who was on the panel, and it was delightful. Oh, they have a new album. No, wait, Visions of Bodies Being Buried. We have already, don't we?
That's
That's the
correct.
horror album.
That's a
Okay.
70s horror album.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, Alistair was a little nervous. They are delightful. They are like Hollywood beautiful people. But they
Oh.
went drinking with us. That night we went drinking with astronauts and clipping. Life gets weird sometimes.
Which, looking back, is perhaps an indicator that we really should have stepped away from the convention scene at that point, because there is nowhere to go but down.
Yeah, you kind of
after that.
at that point. Yes, precisely. We should probably wrap up so that there is appropriate transition time for everybody for the closing ceremony, which I can't remember what time it starts at. So Imperio, please let me know.
Probably in soon. Probably in soon.
Right. Exactly.
Real quick before we go, we do not have the TOS track scanner thingy. Although I won't lie to you, I have looked at the Bluetooth communicator. Marimo Jen says, "Do you have the original series Star Trek scanner thing?"
You mean the tricorder?
It's one that comes in a brown satchel. I actually have the.
No, we only have the next gen. I only have the next gen one. I don't.
Which I believe Eldritch got us. Thank you very much for that.
Exactly. We don't have the original gigantic clunky one. The closing ceremony starts in 45 minutes. Well, I mean, smoke if you got them, folks. You got questions? We got some time.
We could do another 15. Could we do another 15?
No, we could do another 15 minutes.
Okay. We should probably eat at some point.
Oh, yeah, dinner. That's a thing. We'll get the Imperia's on. Keep going! Very much so. All right, more questions. Do I have any questions for you?
I don't know. Do you?
I'm trying to think about any questions I have for you that are Peter related. Not that are Peter related.
Just as a quick aside, given that Star Trek is currently on the table, as it were, there's
Strange New Worlds is so good.
I've actually done some writing for the Star Trek RPG, and as is often the case with my RPG career, I volunteered I basically said, please could I be considered to write for Discovery when you get that? And I said, yeah, we don't have the license yet, but we'll keep you under consideration. And now they've done Discovery. But if you haven't seen it, the Star Trek RPG is very, very good. It's really good. And it's very much in keeping with the show. And if I had another 17 hours in the day, I would be on the way to my judo black belt. And if I had another 35 hours in the day, I'd also be running the Star Trek tabletop RPG.
Can we just spend the next 15 minutes talking about Star Trek? Because I can totally do that.
Oh, well, I have written a book about it.
You do? You should tell people about the book you wrote about Star Trek.
I work with a company
called... Do we have a physical copy of it?
Yeah, we do. It's out on the brag shelf.
Oh, you're back!
Okay.
Let me mute myself.
I work with a company called Obverse Books, who do this fantastic series, what's essentially critical monographs, where you write kind of 25 to 35,000 words on an episode of a thing. And they have three particular lines. They have Black Archive, which does this for Doctor Who. They have Gold Archive, which is just launched, which does this for Star Trek. And they have Silver Archive, which is a more occasional one, which is just for pickup stuff. They did a 2-volume breakdown of Sapphire and Steel, the oddest British genre TV show ever made, and I don't say that lightly, which is well worth your time. This is the book I did for them as part of their Star Trek line. It's on an episode of Disco called Through the Valley of Shadows. This is the episode which basically brings what we know happens to Pike into Disco, and I was able to do an awful lot of stuff with it and able to explore how the show uses postmodern and metafictional literary techniques very successfully to basically plant this modern artifact inside 50-year-old continuity and make it work. And also how Pike is in many ways Starfleet's King Arthur, and how he is the embodiment.
And they tell him as much in Discovery.
Yes.
Yeah, because that doesn't mess with your head.
He is the embodiment of the Starfleet ideal, literally so. As Marguerite says in one of the other episodes, he demands to know why the Enterprise was left out of the war, and Admiral Cornwell says, because if we lost, the best of us needed to carry on. And because Anson Mount's incredibly good, the response he gives to that is kind of,
Oh crap! You actually answered me.
shit. It's great. I love doing this stuff. This is literally what I'm trained to do. My degrees are in English and history and contemporary English literature.
Which is why whenever we make typos or he says things like "I word good," I just laugh.
Yes, I do in fact word super good. Yeah, and thank you very much, Wendy. I also did Day of the Doctor for Obverse. I did the 50th anniversary special and talked about
I didn't bring that one over. Sorry.
how I don't believe we have a real copy of that, which seems very weird.
How do we not have a physical copy of that?
Which was just incredibly good fun.
Mm.
And I had to be very careful how many times I rewatched that because there are parts of that get me right in the feels. I'm actually doing another thing for them, which I'm not entirely sure I can talk about, but it's another Doctor Who book, and I am involved in the structural construction of it, and I'll be writing some pieces for it too.
And there's another Star Trek one you want to do as
There's
well.
yeah, I want to do Star Trek 4. If we get Gold Archive season 2, if we get the go ahead,
Best Star Trek movies?
Star Trek 4.
Star Trek. Second best Star Trek movie?
Star Trek 4 again.
Galaxy Quest.
Yes.
Don't at me. There we go. You may proceed, sir.
But yeah, I want to do the book on Star Trek 4 because it's my mom's favorite movie, and I was one.
Because you've been there.
Because I've been there. I've literally been to most
I
of
don't
those
know if we
locations.
told
there.
everybody this. So when Alasdair and I finally did. Okay, so we dated online internationally. Thank God for FaceTime for like a year and a half,
right?
And then we met in person, which is an adorable story in and of itself. And then it became very obvious somebody was going to have to move countries because we needed to spend the rest of our lives together. And at that time, I was getting ready to leave my job and do something else. And Alistair was on a contract job that wrapped up, and he had like a 4-month gap between, when his job finished and when I was going to move to the UK to come to law school. So he came to live in California for 4 months, and we did everything Californian. We went to Yosemite, we went to Disneyland, we went to Tahoe. We did all the California stuff. And he has an adorable Disneyland story. What was I talking about? Oh my gosh, I was just talking about how cute you were.
Well, I mean.
Oh, and we went to the Monterey Bay Aquarium.
Yes.
Of course, so that you could see where the whales were.
Maybe the whale singing to that man.
Exactly. Can I keep talking about Star Trek?
Please
One
do.
summer was I still in high school or was I just starting out in college? I had a friend who was a cosplayer, and I spent the entire summer making Star Trek costumes for him for pay. I made tons of money. My mom is a Star Trek fan, so I am a second generation Trekkie. I've met, I think of the original cast, the only one I've met in person is Nicole Nichols. I didn't want to meet, the one. Haven't done Star Trek conventions in quite a while, but yes, I love everything about it. And I did the enthusiasm about Star Trek with Kareem and one other person whose name escapes me at the moment. Okay, did I miss any questions, Wendy? Because otherwise I'm just going to talk about Star Trek for the rest of the night, and we really should leave people time to have
Them come
meals
down and power up time.
before the lovely closing ceremonies. And then I do believe, oh yeah, I met Brett Spiner. He's hilarious. He's wonderful. And he still doesn't understand what that whole podcast thing is. I wonder if he knows now. Doesn't he have one now?
I think so.
The person I've always really wanted to meet because of the overlap in our lives. I've never met in person, but I've seen on stage. Speaking of those things that we did while we were in California, SDCC. More important, San Diego Comic-Con. More specifically, we went to Wootstock. And if y'all are old enough like us, Wootstock was a vaudeville show that Will Wheaton, Paul Storm, and a couple of other old school geeky crew people put together, and it was delightful. But we're all sitting there in the audience, and this voice starts singing the theme song to Reading Rainbow, and LeVar Burton walks out on stage, and the whole crowd just went, oh,
The only audience reaction I've ever seen that comes to
this was such a sweet story. Yes.
Marguerite took me to see Weird Al Yankovic at the Apollo in London a few years ago, and he is an astounding entertainer.
I cannot wait for the Daniel Radcliffe biopic story. That is going to be so phenomenal.
But when it got to one particular song, which has the word aluminum in it, you could hear this packed audience of 750 British nerds brace for it to be pronounced wrong.
They're just like, and then he sings
Aluminium
foil,
and
the whole audience just goes,
I seem to remember he got applauded for it.
He did.
I want to say there was an ovation for it.
Song, he sings aluminium foil, and the whole audience was like, "Oh, you know us." It was so sweet. Also, he does like 12 costume changes. He's like phenomenal. Absolute legend.
Dude is like nerd Mick Jagger. It's amazing.
That is the best description of Weird Al ever. He is nerd Mick Jagger.
One of the folks on the Thrilling Adventure Hour perfectly described seeing him come into a room as how being Weird Al Yankovic working must be amazing because everyone is always pleasantly surprised to see you. How he just kind of progressed into the studio and people were like, "Oh, hello, it's you."
All right, we've got one last question, I think, and then we're going to wrap it up. And this is from Eldridge. Where is Peter kayaking right now?
Right now, Peter is kayaking at Tuolumne Lake in Yosemite. And Tim really wants s'mores. And Peter is refusing to admit that not only has he packed s'mores anticipating this, but he actually quite wants them too.
Now you're going to make me miss Yosemite. S'mores sound fantastic, don't they?
Kind of do.
I gotta get Tim back on stream at some point so the two of you can just go feral at everybody. That would be Delory. I'm still trying to find like a really good like 2-act play that the two of them could do. Like honestly, I think that having the two of you do the introduction to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, heads.
There's an art to building up suspense.
Would be
you could hear Mike saying that, can't you? There's an art to building up suspense.
No. Yeah, see, that's who do we cast as what? I think that would be delightful. That would be. I just said Tim, didn't I? I didn't say Mike LeBeau. I just said
they're interchangeable.
I'm so sorry, Mike, but you are the embodiment of Timness. Your Timness is just indivisible at this point. Oh God, no! Tim Meredith and Alasdair doing Rosencrantz. I'm writing that down.
My counter argument to that is why would you have Tim and I do Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead when you could have Tim and Ben do Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead?
No, but you've got to break up that dynamic. It's got to be somebody else because you can play not the straight man, but the serious grounding to
Tim Roth. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Those of you who haven't seen it, by the way, and I believe this might be findable on YouTube, not that we're endorsing that, apart from Due South, which has been released by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation on YouTube in high def for free, and it's lovely.
Which is why Alasdair has to wear headphones when he goes to bed, because otherwise I don't get to sleep because he's listening to Canadians.
Yes. The Tim Roth, Gary Oldman, Richard Dreyfuss movie version of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is a formative text for me.
It's just seminal. It's so... An audience!
Don't move!
Is just so good. So very, very good. All right, let's wrap this up, everybody, so that you can go and do... Okay, Stray Mom says, now is a time for you to go and take a stretch and have a snack or a meal. So I haven't had a meal yet. We should go have a meal. And get some water and make sure that you've attended to any medications you need to take or any pets or small ones that need feeding. Imperio, can you remind us when the closing ceremony again is? I'm thinking it's in like 35 minutes, I think. So apologies for cutting into everybody's meal break, but please go have a meal. And then there will be the closing well, almost closing ceremony. And then I believe there's one more panel running in about an hour, which is the rescheduled Creative Commons one, which I really shouldn't stay up for, but
But you're
I
going to.
might be staying. We'll put it this way: if we're gonna go to bed, you can watch Canadian whatnot, and I'll watch the legal panel, right? I mean, it's like PCOS. Let's be honest. I think that's everything.
All right.
If there's anything I've missed, please let me know. But if not,
Folks, thank you so much. This has been a delight. I've been Alasdair,
and I've been Marguerite.
and this has been fun. We'll see you next time.
Have a good rest of your ArchiveCon. Bye.